Welcome to Speaking Candidly with Candace, where we talk in depth with everyday people about their fears and challenges and how they have overcome them. I hope over the next half hour you will be engaged, enlightened, and inspired to live your best life. My guest today is Russ N., a recovering alcohol and drug addict. He has been sober for 31 years and has agreed to do this interview in order to help others. He is also asked to keep his identity anonymous in order to protect his family and friends. Russ, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Candace.
I appreciate you willing to share your story. I know it's not an easy one, but I'm going to start with the first question, which is, when did you first discover that you had an alcohol addiction and drugs?
Well, first you have to go through the denial. And I was having issues with depression, which we found out later was bipolar disorder. And I was looking at the reasons as to why I wasn't too much. Mm-hmm. And then I was in a situation where I started seeing the reasons why I was. And that's when I really came to the realization.
When did you start drinking?
I was probably about 11 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
And was it in your family's home? How did you get the alcohol?
No, friends had it. We had ways of getting alcohol. It's not hard to get alcohol. It's very readily available.
And when did you start taking drugs?
Considering the alcohol is also a drug, but
right.
Yeah, let's not separate the two. But I really started doing drugs when I was 13 years old.
At 13?
At 13.
And again, readily available?
Not as readily available as you would think, but you could find it.
And how did you pay for these drugs?
Friends had it, so you could always mooch off them. You could steal to get money. You could, I hate to say it, but I stole a lot of money.
So you did steal. Was that from family, friends, strangers?
Yeah, all the above.
All the above.
Yeah. If I saw money, I could take it. And I could take it, I did.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I know that in our pre-discussion you talked about being institutionalized or going to a psychiatric institute in your senior year of high school.
Yes.
Where did you go, and was that voluntary or court ordered, or how did that come?
It wasn't really voluntarily. It was a month before my 16th birthday, and I had used an exorbitant amount of drugs. What I'm going to tell you, you're not going to believe, but I had drinking an entire bottle of the large white wine. I had stolen bottles of Valium, Librium, and Xantax. They're all
prescription drugs.
The prescription drugs, and they're all depressants. Mm-hmm. And I was like popping the pills, like I drank the whole bottle, and I was popping the pills like they were Tic Tacs.
Wow.
And I was in a hypomanic state. Why am I still here? I did have antidepressants in my body. Mm-hmm. Although I had taken them off, they were still in there buffering the system, as I've been told.
Right.
Otherwise, I wouldn't be here.
How long were you in the psychiatric unit?
Well, first they had taken me. I had a huge breakdown at home and became very violent, and the police had to come, and they took me up to the general hospital, and they put me on their psych floor, at that point. It was determined that I needed long-term care, so they discharged me or transferred me, I guess is the best way, to Shepherd Pratt Hospital, just north of Baltimore in Towson, Maryland. And that's where I was for the next 11 months or so, 12 months.
And what about, I want to ask you about your time spent for 11 months
Mm-hmm.
in a facility such as that, what that was like, but let me kind of go backwards and ask about your family life.
Okay.
Regular parents? Any other siblings?
Yes, I have other siblings. I come from a large family of 5. I would have to say we had our challenges. You could see we were a dysfunctional family. When you have something, I don't want to just really separate the addiction and the mental illness. They're bound together. When that's going on with one person, there's a ripple effect inside the family. And in the 80s, I think people talk about stigma. I mean, back then you did not talk about it. You did not tell someone that you're seeing a psychiatrist. I have to give it to the millennial generation. Nowadays, they don't care. I mean,
now they're very proud of doing and going.
Well,
to see
I mean,
psychiatrists.
and I think that's really a good thing. People see it more as a medical condition, where I was treated as a behavior problem.
Right. Most people know that alcoholism is kind of inherited in the family, and were either of your parents an alcoholic?
I didn't know it, but my father was a recovering alcoholic. And I believe it's 9 times more likely that the son of a male will inherit the condition.
So when did you find out that your father was a recovering alcoholic?
When I was trying to get clean on my own, and I had been fighting, so you don't understand. And then he told everyone to leave the room, and then he told me.
That had to be, I guess, somewhat comforting, but also very surprising and maybe foster a little bit of anger?
It was a very tricky thing. It doesn't go the way the storybook goes. He thought he knew everything. And on the other hand, there was a certain amount of comfort in that. I could look at things as a real way. But my family really denied that I even had a problem with it going into, while I was into long-term care. That was an issue.
They denied it.
Yep.
But did they deny the fact that you were stealing from them?
Yes, they denied everything like that. I was just a behavior problem. They didn't know that. At that point, I was really drinking alcohol. And that was my drug of choice, okay? We talk about the drug of choice. That was my drug of choice. I didn't smoke a lot of weed. I didn't really like marijuana. I've never done LSD. People get wowed out by that. Never done any of that. But I do, they just denied all that. I'm stealing out of my mom's liquor cabinet. And,
Where did you think that liquor went?
That, I don't know. I mean, the animal of denial
Right.
is very strong.
It is.
It really is. People don't understand that, It's stronger than denial. It really is.
Well, you mentioned that you had other siblings.
Yes.
Any other mental or physical issues within those other siblings?
I think that we all have a taste of the anxiety or depression at some point in time. I did have another sibling who ended up going to Hazleton. I'd just like to leave it at that for that person's I don't have permission to talk about that. But now I have nieces and nephews. And a few years ago, I got a text from my nephew. And he goes, hey, what's up? How do you stop feeling depressed? And, I always knew that text was going to come. And I talked to my sibling, and I said, look, he came to me. I had no one to go to. He came to me. And I talked to him. It was winter time, of course, and I said, you could get outside more, get some light. I knew a lot about supplements, and I told him what to take and all that. And he started seeing his doctor more often. He'd already been seeing a doctor, and he snapped out of it. And
that's very impressive.
Well, I'm just glad he had someone he could come to me.
So you said that you had no one to come to, yet you had parents, you had siblings. What about friends?
It wasn't a known
Teachers?
thing. Teachers, I did not have a good relationship at school. I actually had one teacher that I despised because I felt he bullied me because I was going through stuff. So it's not a good idea to bully a bipolar person, by the way. Mike Tyson has bipolar disorder. I just want to point out some people that have it.
Right.
It wasn't, school I just had dropped, basically. I wasn't really doing anything in school. My grades went from B to D, and probably because they wanted to get me out, they weren't going to fail me, So I really didn't have anyone at school. Again, in the 80s, it was really, I was seeing a psychiatrist who said you could not become depressed until you're 40. So he just was really...
That's awful.
I think he really ruined my life. He took 3 years of my life where he could have fixed it. On the other hand, I'm lucky I got better at 16, 17, where some people don't get, they get late in life. But I mean, there's a lot of people behind the times. There's a lot of things. The stigma, like I said then, was really intense. You did not talk about it, and I think that made the denial even more intense.
And that's why I'm really glad that you're here on the show to talk about it and maybe share your experience of how you did finally have the opportunity to quit and recover. And we talked about, you're working right now. I imagine also with your history, getting employment might have been challenging.
I was really, you got to realize I had gotten it together just before I turned 18. So, no, employment really wasn't the big job. I've had some issues at the job. I actually have lost a job because of our right to work laws and ways you can say things. Not so many words because of it, but not because of it. I ended up quitting that job because I had enough. But it's not something I would tell an employer. I mean, I learned from that mistake. I mean,
so not share information that is...
no, I wouldn't really get into it with,
But let's go back to the bipolarism, because you've mentioned it a number of times, and I assume it was a official diagnosis.
Yes, it was.
And your parents had you on medication for it?
No, I wasn't diagnosed until I went into Shepherd Pratt, the long-term care. And when you're in long-term care, what they do basically is they try to get you as low as they can in a controlled environment like that to see what's going on. It's really interesting that that's how they did it. And they noticed that I would rapid cycle. I'd have my highs and lows, and my doctor had me go into the nurse's station every day, and at certain times of the day, kind of chart where my mood was up and down. And they had put me on something called Lithobid, which is a very light dose of lithium, and they noticed a change. And I'm sure there's other things, when you're in the hospital, you're really being watched all the time. I mean, it's not like, it's not a prison, it's just, but, they know, I mean, you can get there's ways that you're not being watched, but for the general, they are seeing everything and observing everything. And it's being reported back to your doctor. And, of course, I saw my doctor about 3 times a week. And it was... They get a good eye on you and they can see what's coming. And
did you resist any of the treatment?
Absolutely not. At that point, I remember after that violent episode, just sitting in the car. It was really interesting. Part of me was like 50-50 here. I was like, Russ, do whatever they tell you. You are now at rock bottom. The other part was like, forget about them. Look where they put you. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It was just the angel and devil on your shoulder.
Sure.
And I decided to go the route of taking entire year to surrender, to really realize that I was powerless.
And you mentioned hitting rock bottom. Do you mind sharing what happened when you hit rock bottom?
Well, basically, I had taken the alcohol for all those drugs. The next day, I had a fit. My father and I have been fighting a lot, and it's foggy. I have to admit to that, but I ran for a knife, and the knives weren't there. I got tackled down, and the police came.
And that's when the police came?
Yep.
And that's when you were first put into a psychiatric unit?
That's when I was taken up, and I didn't come home for a year.
And it was a whole year from the first time?
July 9th until July 1st. So, yeah.
Does that go on your record as a felony or
No.
one of the criminal
I was
charges?
under the age of 18. They took me into a psychiatric facility, so no. It was never on my record as a juvenile. It's not on my record as an adult.
Which is very helpful, and it's good that you did get the help that obviously you needed.
Yes.
And you're now living a pretty good life, I assume?
Yeah, I have my moments, but they're not like they used to be. I do have moments in the day, probably every day, where I kind of feel myself a little nudge, but it's not like I'm automatically going to fall into a deep depression. I'm bipolar 2, so I don't go into a full-blown mania, but I go into what's called hypomania, where I'm very happy with where my life turned out. I'm very lucky, too.
Very lucky to be alive, it sounds like it.
Well, I'm lucky to have gotten treatment, too.
Right.
A lot of people aren't going to get treatment. Yeah.
And are you currently seeing any psychiatrist?
Great question. I haven't seen a psychiatrist. I was his first patient ever. And, now I'm 48 years old. I basically do phoners with him. Once a month, we're on the phone. It's actually at 6:15 in the morning. And then I go up and see him maybe every 3 months or so. It's mostly medication management. And if I ever have any issues, that's how far I've gotten. Whereas I was in the hospital in a therapeutic environment 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, because they do check you at night. And then when I got out, I was seeing a psychiatrist. I decided to go twice a week. And then that was my first year of college. I was at community college. And then, now it's like, I just see these phoners. And I think that's where I am now. I don't know what the future holds, but it's probably going to be the same way.
Do you think that you were self-medicating with the drugs and alcohol before you were able to get on a prescription drug for your bipolarism?
Well, it would help me cut the edge off, I guess you could say. But, to say that it's just purely self-medicating and not an addictive thing is copping out. There are people that do self-medicate, and I think most CD counselors have to differentiate, is this person self-medicating or is this person an addict? Okay. And, yeah, that was part of it. Yes, and maybe that's what I went for alcohol, because that would really cut the edge off. It's also very available, and again, if you're drinking alcohol, you don't have a drug problem, so to speak. That's what we thought, but unfortunately, you have an alcohol problem, you have a drug problem. It goes both ways. It's the same thing.
So are you feeling that obviously the year in the psychiatric unit was a huge help?
It's the best year. It's the best thing that ever happened to me.
And never any declines afterwards? Any falling off the wagon, so to speak?
No, I've been sober ever since. But I'll tell you one thing, being in the hospital, I remember in the school there and everything, walking around, I was like, man, if I was outside right now, we call it the inside and the outside,
right.
I'd be messed up, really messed up. And, no matter how much you don't want to be there, you're very grateful that you are there. I can't say everyone was like that, right. But I was.
Were there withdrawal symptoms in the initial stages of being in the hospital?
Nothing physical withdrawals, but people say, psychological. You do go through psychological withdrawal, and it's not a fun thing to go through. It's actually, it can be very dangerous. The hypomania, rapid cycling started a lot faster. I would go into highs and very deep lows. There was some sort of, and you do have the urges. A lot of addicts will tell you about dreams of picking up or drinking or something like that. You will have those. Yeah.
So when you were in the unit, I assume there were other people with you?
Yes.
Were they all in similar situations in terms of?
Give or take, most people were in for drugs, I have to say. Some people were not. There, depression, self-harm. It's really hard because one of the girls was from Charlottesville and she's not with us anymore. I found out when I moved here. Suicide attempts, eating disorders. One person had I knew 2 people that had schizophrenia. It's the stereotype of what a psychiatric hospital was. It's not. It's not. Okay.
That's sort of, I guess, what I'm getting at.
Yeah, it was. I will say that those hospitals really aren't around anymore. Now, state facility. If you want long-term care, you're not going to be able to get where they've gone to day hospitals mostly because insurance companies aren't going to cover it. And I saw that happening when I was there. People getting discharged like 2 weeks in, and yeah.
You talked about the experiences of some of the other people that were in the unit with you. Did you ever do self-harm? Did you ever try to commit suicide or?
No, I didn't. There was a time though I was very close to it when I was, I'd say 14 years old. Yeah, I was 14 years old. And I was going through it was winter, and I was being bullied at school, in hindsight, and I just had enough of it, and I had come to a point, there's a line you cross when you commit or even attempt I didn't attempt, but I remember breaking down, just yelling at my parents. That's what I wanted to do, and you know, that sounded some alarms.
How is your relationship with your family right now?
Oh, we get along great.
Yeah,
Just
excellent.
wonderful, like the Brady Bunch. No, I mean, we have our ups and downs and ins and outs.
You had me there.
Well, you know, it's a big family. I mean, come
Right.
on. And we're gonna, you know, I lost my father 5 years ago to a 12-day battle of cancer.
I'm sorry.
That really hits your head, hits you hard. And I did get to talk to him, and we it's just amazing where we got. We really got far. And I remember my dad's obituary. It said, in lieu and flowers, you know, there was 5 kids in the family. Donations to Shepherd Pratt Hospital, and I lost it.
Nice.
I really did lose it. 5 kids in the family. We've all had, and he had me on mine, and yeah, that really was a special moment.
I bet it was.
We had gone from somewhere to a new place.
Again, I applaud you for, because it takes commitment to go through what you went through and to come out the other side.
It really does take surrender. You know, we talk about the 12 steps, okay, and I took that entire first year when I went into the hospital, and I said, you know what, Russ, just do the first step the whole year. And, you know, and I went to an NA meeting while I was in the hospital, and there's a speaker there. This guy had gone through it all, you know, in and out of juvenile detention centers, in and out of jails, in a wheelchair, older man. And one thing he said that stuck with me is, anytime you relapse, I don't care if it's because you wrecked your car, your friend died, or you lost your job, it's because you don't have a first step, which is surrender, admitting that you're powerless. And because addiction has such a pull, and the depression's playing, the bipolar disorder's playing in there too, because you have feelings of so great that, you know, nothing can harm you, and then down low so much that you should just give up. And I took the whole year to do that first step.
Do you think that you would be where you are now without proper medication?
No, absolutely not. In fact, I've had a number of people, we're in Charlottesville, and a number of people are all of a sudden herbal experts, and I'm not downplaying, you know, that type of, to me that would be an adjunct thing to do. You know, I think exercise is important. I do think you get your multivitamins, your B12, all that stuff, fish oil, you know, but without the medication, I would not be where I am today. Absolutely not.
And what about talking with other people or with a counselor? Because you mentioned early on that you felt like you didn't have anybody to talk to share what was going on with you.
When you go into the hospital, you realize that you're not the only one. You really do, and that is, God, that takes a ton off your back. You're not the only one. Especially the staff, they go, oh yeah, we understand. You know, especially the denial of my family, don't worry, we've heard it before. And it's like, really? You know, and I had a very good social worker who did family counseling. It was the liaison between me and my family. You know, like, a lot of people think I was in prison or something. No, it's far from that. You know, it's pretty far from that. But yeah, it does help to just hear somebody say something, and he's like, oh, you too. It's like, and then yeah, talking with counselors, you know, talking with, we had to have one staff talk, which is a nurse or what they call a mental health worker a day to get our point, and we had to have a peer talk. And we had a lot of things they put you on points for. Then they could add points if you needed encouragement, so to speak. I had a negativity point because I was pretty negative, but yeah, you know, I mean, and you go on level systems, and the more levels you get, the more you can do, and yeah, that's how it works on that angle.
Well, tell us, because we're running a little bit tight on time. So what are you doing now with your life?
I work. I got a degree. College is hard. I'm not going to lie. It's very hard to go to college and stay sober. I was 2.5 years. I went to a community college first, and I made it through that. And wow. I've worked in broadcasting. I've worked in retail sales. I've been able to adapt to. It's hard, but you know, you see an industry kind of go away, or you're not working anymore, and then go into a new one. And I learned how to sell, which is something you can't really teach. And I wake up every day and I know I'm on a good track.
Do you feel like routine is helpful for you, given your diagnosis? And
routine can be your best friend. Going to work when you're in a down state, I think, brings you up. You have to know when you need to call your doctor and say, hey, I can't come to work today, I'm not feeling well. And you do have to know those, but you can't throw the towel in every time you're not feeling mentally up. This is what you got.
right.
Yeah.
And that's, one of the things that we talked about, mentioned in the beginning of the program, is you were kind enough to come here and speak your truth to help others. So what advice would you give somebody who is either diagnosed with bipolarism or is struggling with drugs and alcohol addiction? As you mentioned, alcohol is a drug, but with some sort of addiction.
You got to do what you're told. You really have to do what you're told. It's not going to be fixed overnight. It's not going to be fixed in 3 weeks. A lot of people feel that, I talk to people in recovery and they go, yeah, I've been sober for 3 months and I'm on the 7th step. And I was like, back up, brother. It's like, it doesn't work that way. You have your whole life ahead of you. Don't listen to the nonsense, and you're going to hear it. Just don't give up. That's the one thing. You can have your peaks and valleys, but you can't give up. It's not an option. It's not an option.
I'd like to end on that note because I think that's a really positive note that everybody, whether they have an addicted personality or just struggling with a fear or a challenge, is to work through it and not to give up. Thank you, Russ, for being here. This is Candace with Speaking Candidly with Candace. And remember, every cloud has a silver lining.